When you get into the late rounds of a Dynasty startup draft, that's where championships are built. While everyone else is grabbing depth pieces, you can find players with serious league-winning upside. In this video, I'm breaking down 5 late-round Dynasty startup gems that are flying under the radar but could absolutely smash their ADP in 2025 and beyond. So let's dive right in. All right, guys, so number 5 on my list, we have DeAndre Swift for the Chicago Bears. So last year, guys, he had over 250 carries and still was only the RB19. He was terribly inefficient outside of a big-time run here or there. And, guys, I get it. He did not look good last year, but the Bears' offensive line was atrocious last year, and he did show some signs of being explosive in certain situations. You know, he broke off some big-time touchdown runs here and there, like I said. But overall, I mean, his value is absolutely in the dirt. The Bears didn't draft a running back very highly like I thought they were going to. They drafted Kyle Monangai, who I do like, in the 6th round. But DeAndre Swift's likely, very likely, to be the RB1, at least for this coming season. And he's only 26 years old. He's not super old as well, and he's shown some signs, especially with the Philadelphia Eagles, that he can be a solid, high-end RB2 if he has some solid blocking. And, with this new offensive line, I love their guards with Joe Thuney, and the other guy that they picked up, and their center from the Patriots, I believe, is also pretty solid. So they have a great interior where they're going to be able to get DeAndre Swift some gaps to run through. And look at some of the running backs that are going around his range. We've got Trey Benson, who hasn't – I like Trey Benson, but we haven't seen him take enough snaps for us to know if he's even good or not. Isaiah Pacheco looked horrible coming off of the leg injury. Hopefully, as a Chiefs fan, I hope he bounces back and is that same violent runner that we saw in 2022 and 2023, but – we don't know. James Conner, he did have a solid season last year, but he's very old and injury-prone. Tyron Tracy is likely to have his job taken by midseason by Cam Skattebo. And Brian Robinson Jr., who's been arguably more inefficient than DeAndre Swift has over the past couple seasons. And then Zach Charbonnet. I love Zach Charbonnet, so I'm not going to slight him here. But look at his value, guys. His value is in the dirt. You can get him in the 11th, even sometimes 12th round in your startup drafts. And, you're getting him around like the Isaiah Pacheco range. And that's great for a guy that I think will probably still get, 170 to 200 carries next year. So as long as he can step it up a little bit in his efficiency metrics, he can be a solid RB2 for you guys, and that is great in the 11th or 12th round. So next up on my list, we've got Josh Downs for the Colts, their dynamic slot weapon. I loved him coming out of North Carolina. I thought he had, pretty solid yak ability, great speed, great ability to, get all these catches underneath and make the most out of them. And with Josh Downs, I know he's a little undersized, but he's still super young. He's not even 24 yet. And in my opinion, he's the most talented receiver on that Colts offense still. I think Tyler Warren coming in does throw a wrench into things a little bit, but the Anthony Richardson experiment is almost over. It's going to have a conclusion this season, whether it ends good or bad for Anthony Richardson. And Daniel Jones, I think, can get Josh Downs the football because he is constantly getting open on film, him and Adonai Mitchell both. So if A-Rich doesn't step it up next year and actually hit receivers in stride and actually, throw accurate footballs, Daniel Jones is going to come in and they're going to figure out the quarterback situation by probably 2026 if they have to draft one, since their roster is pretty solid outside of that. But with Josh Downs, he's the wide receiver 43 right now, which is absolutely insane given a guy that has shown the ability to have big games when he gets the target volume. And he's going around the same range as like Khalil Shakir, who, I do like, but I don't think he's as talented as Josh Downs. Devontae Adams, who obviously is very talented but has 1 or 2 years left, maybe. Chris Godwin, who's coming off the injury, I do like is buy low right now. Trey Harris over Josh Downs, complete insanity. Trey Harris in a run-heavy offense as an X is just not going to produce the way you guys think. And then Jaden Reed, I think this is like an okay range for Josh Downs, but he finishes the wide receiver 35 last season, despite missing 3 games due to some, kind of minor injuries, and having some of the worst quarterback play imaginable last year. And he's still all the way down here at the wide receiver 43, despite not even being 24 years old yet, guys. That doesn't make any sense to me. And you can get him way down there in your startup drafts. And if you can grab him as like a depth option, you're going to be feeling really good about him next year. At number 3, we have Ricky Pearsall for the San Francisco 49ers. And guys, I don't know if I'm missing something with him, but he was a first-round pick last year. I love some of the highlights that he showed on tape at Florida. I think he's got a lot of really good tools to be a successful receiver at the next level. And, he didn't have a great rookie season because he got shot, guys. And, he was kind of late to the season, had to pick up the offense pretty much sporadically. And he still had some good games as well. He still had over a 100-yard game, I believe, this past season. And he's a first-round pick that they're going to invest in, and the San Francisco 49ers offense always has fantasy-relevant wide receivers, whether it's Jawan Jennings, who I don't really believe in as a talent, but he still put up a 50-point game pretty much last year, and Brandon Ayuk, when healthy, has been pretty solid fantasy wide receiver. When Debo was there, he was relevant when he was on the field. So the San Francisco 49ers offense can absolutely give you a stud wide receiver production. But with Ricky Pearsall, people just keep fading him, I guess. I'm not sure. Yeah, he's a little bit of an older prospect, but he's still got the draft capital. They're still going to utilize him to his fullest potential next year because they spent that high draft capital on him. He showcased that he can have a big game this past season in the very limited games that he played. And look where he's going. He's going around the Mike Evans, Brandon Ayuk range. And I think realistically, Ricky Pearsall could be the wide receiver 1 in that offense if Brandon Ayuk doesn't come back to full form. And if you're talking about the wide receiver 1 in a San Francisco 49ers offense, he is much higher than the wide receiver 34. I've been giving up my 2026 first since most of them are projected to be late first. I've been giving up 2 or 3 of my first in 2 or 3 different leagues for Ricky Pearsall. And I think giving up a 2026 first for Pearsall right now, if it's projected late, is a very good deal, and you're buying extremely low on a guy that could be the wide receiver 1 in one of the better offenses in the NFL. And at my number 2 spot, it's a veteran option. You got Dak Prescott with the Dallas Cowboys. So with Dak, if you're building your team to kind of have a long-term future and not have to want to win now. Obviously, Dak Prescott's a fade just because of his age and, his own personal long-term outlook. But, guys, if you're trying to be competitive year 1, Dak Prescott's one of the better quarterbacks right now to go after. And I'll tell you why. So, Dak Prescott, he's kind of had this kind of weird trend where he plays like an MVP caliber, top 4 quarterback in fantasy. Then he'll get hurt and not have a good season at all, obviously. Then he'll come back and have a MVP caliber season where he's a top 4 quarterback again, and then he gets hurt. That's been his past 4 seasons now. Dak Prescott, if he can come back and showcase that he can do it once again, obviously he doesn't have the wheels that he used to have as, that young Dak that could really move. He's still a very solid passer in a very solid offense with now George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. Ferguson's solid, but, and they still have an okay offensive line, not nearly as what it was, back in 2018, but still a decent O-line. I think they have a pretty decent roster all the way around. So I think Dak Prescott, if they go back to that same offense, he can really put up some major numbers for you guys. And look where he's going. He's going after guys like Penix, who, despite playing in a couple games, he still threw 3 picks and 3 touchdowns in those 2 games and was very spotty in some of his throws. I know some film guys like him, but I think he does a little bit too much on film, and that's going to get him in trouble next year. Bryce Young, who's been benched, he was benched last year, had a horrible rookie year. We don't even know if he's going to last through his rookie contract. He did look good down the stretch, and I hope that he plays to that level next year, but we have no idea. Jared Goff, who, I'd probably pick Jared Goff over Dak Prescott just because of the season that he had last year. But the other guys, Jackson Dart, I do love, especially if you're wanting a really solid quarterback in 2026, if he develops correctly. But Dak Prescott, at his current price as the QB 22, is insane value for a guy that could be a top 5 quarterback next year if everything breaks right and he doesn't get any injuries. Number 1 on my list, guys, is Tyreek Hill, and I don't think it's particularly close. His value is absolutely in the dumpster right now, and I can't really understand why. He's currently the wide receiver 39 on Keep Trade Cut, and he still finished last season as the wide receiver 18, despite being in one of the worst offensive situations with Skylar Thompson and Brett Huntley for a good portion of the year. And then when Tua came back, guys, he looked phenomenal. Tua looked phenomenal. And Tyreek Hill, I think, can take that step up next year, or in this next season, and showcase that he can be a top 8 wide receiver in fantasy again. And I absolutely think that's going to happen because with Tyreek, we still saw the big-time games. We saw multiple 100-yard games out of him and, the touchdown on top of that. We saw that he was still pretty fast on film despite him being 31 years old, right? And, again, horrible offensive situation, and he was still the wide receiver 18. If they just step it up marginally, he can be a wide receiver 10 to 12, and he's currently the wide receiver 39 just due to his age. But you see guys like Mike Evans above him, Jerry Jeudy above him. Tyreek Hill's better than both of those guys, and we've seen it time and time again. We forget in 2023, just a little over 2 years ago now, the season before last, he was a very high-end wide receiver 1 with, like 1,800 yards. He was on pace for 2,000 yards at one point during the season. He had an insane year. Yet, people are clowning him now because he had a down year. But so did Waddle, but everybody's not super down on Waddle right now just because he's 26. It doesn't make any sense, guys. If you can take Tyreek Hill in the 8th, 9th round of your startup drafts, which I've seen him go that far in multiple startups now, if you can get that done, that's an absolute smash for you if you're trying to compete year 1. But yes, he is at an absurdly low value right now. And that wraps up my top 5 late round gems for your Dynasty startups. Guys that could pay off in a huge way without costing you premium picks. If you like this video, drop a like, hit subscribe, and let me know which late round steal you're targeting in your startup this year. Don't forget to join the Bobby's Big Board Discord. The link is in the description if you want to play in leagues with me, talk strategy, or just hang out with the community. Appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Hey.